I fell into sort of the problem that a lot of indie developers fall into, which is I started with plans of making a game that's too big.
I'm joined today by Elliott Bynum, who is the game designer behind Mr. Donovan. Thank you for agreeing to talk with us a little bit about your game today, Elliott.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So to start, why don't you give us a pitch for Mr. Donovan for those who haven't heard of it?
Okay. Mr. Donovan is the first SOBO, single player online battle open world. So it's related in many ways to modern MOBAs that people are used to playing, but it it lacks the interesting MOBA player base that I think people also are very familiar with. Um, there are certain the reason I started with MOBA games. It's not that I'm obsessed with them or that I play them a lot. I do enjoy them, but I just felt like there's actually a lot of substance in what they are, what they consist of, and not necessarily just in battling other people. But so it's a SOBO, and it also has other prominent tower defense aspects to it, as well as other mechanics that I've sort of borrowed from other genres. But yeah, that's essentially it.
Cool. You mentioned the first thing I wanted to talk about, which is this idea of it being a SOBA, a single-player online battle open world. It's a wicked interesting mesh of genres, and I'm wondering what was its inception? Where did that kind of come together from?
It really just came from the games that I enjoy, you know. All of us play a lot of games, and there's always aspects of games that we enjoy more than others. I'm not the most competitive person in the world. There's certain games like, certain MOBA games or Halo or something like that, yeah, that'll come out of me. But most often, it's just the things that I really enjoy are, especially with MOBAs, are just the second to second recalculation of your strategy in defeating an enemy. I love that. There's a lot of games that are sort of just more button mashy, or you learn that in order to take down this foe, then you have to shoot him in the knee, and then he's weakened, and then you can, hit him for a few seconds, and then he gets back up and he's invulnerable again. I didn't want everything to be so scripted. I didn't want you to be able to forecast every battle before you go into it and know exactly what to do and how to do it. I wanted you to have to think about things on the fly constantly. And that's what MOBAs are really good at doing. And that's what I respect about those games. You have to always recalculate your strategy, your positioning, and always pivot constantly with the latest information that you have during the battle in order to defeat someone. So that's where I started. That was my starting point. And to do all that but make it single player was something that I don't see very often in games, which is I was trying to tackle that.
Cool. Having played Mr. Donovan and kind of dug into some of these different aspects from different types and genres of games that you've combined in a really interesting way, one of the things I couldn't help but thinking was this had to have gone through a lot of different iterations. I saw a couple of places where I was like, oh, this seems like it could have started as something a little more linear, not quite as open world. So I was wondering, kind of, if you can give us a little bit of an overview of how the game's changed since you started on it, how it got to the place where it is now on early access on Steam.
Well, the game has changed massively. I've built a few different games in the time that I've been working on it. Um, I think I fell into sort of the problem that a lot of indie developers fall into, which is I started with plans of making a game that's too big. And it seems like something that is so common sense. Don't make a game that's too big. But when you're actually doing it, when you're making it, you want to make the most awesome game that you can. And it's just such an impossible thing to ask someone not to make it too big for some reason. It's just really cool. So I started with a lot of things, but yeah, as you get into development, into the realities of development, you start having to really narrow down and edit what is truly important about the game. And yeah, I for a while I wanted things to be more to be story driven and to be more sort of linear. But I found that I was doing that just to sort of copy other games and not without really having a solid reason for that. So I decided I'm not a great storyteller, so I'll tell a little bit of story here and there, but most of it I'll leave a mystery and let people figure it out on their way. But really, to narrow down to what the game is and what is most important about the game, I wanted to just make an open world. And a lot of the decisions actually came from what is mechanically necessary, especially in developing this game on my own. There are certain aspects like exploring the environment that you land in that I really thought was important only because it was something that was achievable for one person to build. Like I could build one environment for you to run through, and then transporting yourself to other parts of the planet was sort of mechanically necessary just because those other parts of the planet are easy to add to the game later on, So I started development with the full intention of going into early access. And if the game is in alpha and then beta, it gives me time to, as a one-person team, to add all the content that I need on the way, as well as get all the feedback from people helping me sort of determine what is most important to them, which would really guide my decisions in making this game. I think that the most difficult thing as a developer, or one of the absolute most difficult things as a developer, especially for small teams, small indie teams, is knowing where best to spend your time. There are a million things that you would love to do to the game, and there are a million things that, especially there's a million things that programmers want to do, and there are a million different things that concept artists or environment artists want to do, or producers want to do, but you have to wait until some people are actually playing it before you notice that all of those things that you thought was so important is not at all. And then you can really just refine your vision and spend your very precious time on the things that are most important for the game itself. And you judge that by the people that are playing it. Games are good according to, the people that play it. So they're the ones that matter.
Yeah. Could you talk a little bit about what the reception's been like? Maybe there's some things that you didn't expect people to really latch onto or have an issue with that have surprised you?
There's been a lot of surprises. It's just funny when you're so head down on something for so long. You really do get tunnel vision,
Hmm.
and the things that you think are important really aren't, and the things that you never thought about are. People have really loved the idea of pets,
Hmm.
and just making sort of cuddly things or nice creatures in the game that people can interact with in ways different from just fighting them. People have loved that. And it makes sense because I've always loved that in games as well. I've loved games where you can have pets or you can interact with creatures in different ways. But for some reason, it didn't occur to me right off the bat. Um, so, yeah, that reception has been great. So I've been trying to, and that was something that I actually didn't think to put in the game from the start. My brother told me that I should try that and that people might like it because he's always loved it. And I was like, oh yeah, no, that's a great idea. So that was one thing that would not have occurred to me on its own. There's been, I mean, obviously a million things about the mechanics and fine tuning things here and there that I didn't think were so important, but are extremely important to people. And when they give you their argument, you say, "Oh my gosh, that makes perfect sense. Like, why didn't I think of that?" It's the same problem I've mentioned. It's just when you have 1,000 things running through your head about the game, it's so easy to get lost. For certain things to get lost in the crowd when they shouldn't. I'm
Sure.
just so many things. Yeah. But yeah, I think that some things were expected. I mean, the game's in early alpha,
Right.
so there's going to be some problems and a lot of tightening up and extra content that needs to go in. And a few people have pointed out that they can't wait to see more content go in, which was expected. But yeah, one thing that I thought people would find more interesting is the abilities that are in there.
Hmm.
Um, the abilities that I put in the game, I sort of fashioned them after MOBA games because the one thing that I love about abilities in MOBA games, not all of them, I'd say a lot of probably a majority of abilities in MOBA games is that they can be extremely powerful. And this is how the games work. I mean, the abilities work in my game. They can be extremely powerful and extremely useful, but they can actually also be a bit of a hindrance
Hmm.
at the same time, depending on how you use it and how attuned you are to using it. Um, and that's what I like. I like abilities that you have to think about and use at the perfect time. I didn't want abilities that would just outright benefit you in every way. I wanted you to have to think about literally everything, every choice that you make in the game. And if you think about it well, and you're able to use everything in the game to your advantage. But yeah, that was something that I suppose it's early on. Not many
Hmm.
people playing the game have earned all the abilities yet, and things like that. So it makes sense to me. But yeah, I thought they would get a little bit more recognition for what they are than they have. But but the things, everything that people have brought up is fantastically useful, and I love any critiques and ideas that people have. I'm always willing to put them in the game. I mean, that's the nice thing about being one person developing the game is if I hear a great idea, I can put it in the next day. You know,
Right.
I don't have a ladder that I have to take these ideas up to. So it's not bad, or a flagpole to run them up.
Cool. That's awesome insight into kind of how Mr. Donovan has come together. Um, I'm really interested to see how it grows going further. Moving from the game to your story, what got you involved in independent game design?
Probably just the same reason a lot of people do. It's just something that I love, and I've worked in the industry for a long time. geez, I should have thought about how many years before this interview. I've been in for maybe 9 years-ish. But, you know, I went to school and I had an internship during school, so I can count that internship, I suppose. But yeah, it's been an eventful few years in the industry, and I've learned a lot. I just feel like the entire time working, I started out as an environment artist, and I moved on to character art and learned rigging and animation, and moved into production. And the one thing that I always was really curious about was design and programming. So I did that for sort of years while I was working in the industry, just because I was curious about everything. I wanted to learn everything there was to learn in the game industry. You know, what's all this magic behind building video games? I was so curious. So it was a really great, career that I've been having in the game industry, but I decided to just go indie to make this game just to sort of see if I could do it. It's funny, the game didn't start out as an idea to put this game onto Steam. It started out with, I don't know, can I do this? Can I even do this? You know, can I build a box in Unity and control it, you know, to go around obstacles and things like that. So, you know, I started with that, and it sort of became second nature, learning how to make everything function and run. And there's a lot of things that I already known from years of experience, like, you know, building characters and environments and designing environments. So there was a lot to learn, but at the same time, I came into it, I think, pretty well prepared for the task at hand. And I've enjoyed the whole sort of process. It's been an enormous learning opportunity, and it's been a lot of fun. You know?
Cool. So you obviously mentioned the influence that MOBAs have had on Mr. Donovan, but what other games were inspirational to you, both to kind of pursue making games and to create Mr. Donovan?
Well, there's been a ton of games that have inspired me to make games. That's for sure. I mean, I couldn't even remember all the games that I used to play back in the day. But I remember the first game, and I don't know if a lot of people started with Final Fantasy VII. That was actually, it was after I played. That was the first Final Fantasy game that I played back in the 90s that I was able to pick up and install onto my computer and have it run well. and I felt like it was big business. Like I was in it now, because I bought this thing with my own money, and I absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. So that was a huge inspiration. And then, you know, after that, then you got to go back and play Final Fantasies before that and after. But in, you know, the inspiration for the game, I mean, I think the second-to-second combat was inspired by a lot of MOBA games, you know, Dota 2, League of Legends. Other things, you know, even another MOBA, Dawngate, which isn't really a thing anymore, I loved the way it looked. I'm like, wow, that's a gorgeous game. So that was inspiring. But other games are hugely inspirational. I was really inspired by Hyper Light Drifter. I thought that game was just gorgeous. I loved the way that it urged you to explore. I loved the sort of macabre environments and things and little secrets that you would find around every corner, and that was really cool. And I got a lot of ideas. Like I said, I borrowed a few mechanics from other games. I got a lot of ideas from games. Games have done it for a long time, but the one that pops into my mind is just Binding of Isaac. The way that you could walk into a random room. I sort of used that mechanic in mind just because I needed a way to sort of supplement the game easily after it was out and after people were playing it. And I thought that was the perfect way. Like if you were making Binding of Isaac, you could build or figure out different ways to randomize more and more and more rooms while people are playing it, and it's easy, because they'll just walk into it and it's new. So I definitely stole that idea, So in my game, you can teleport yourself to a random part of the planet, and instead of it being a room, it's an entire new environment. But you find the portal somewhere in that environment, and it takes you back home out of the quote unquote room. So yeah, I thought that was fantastic, and obviously I think everyone is inspired in some ways by Minecraft. That game's incredible. So I was inspired by mining and crafting in Minecraft, so I added a little bit of that into my game just because I love it so much. I've always loved the Age of Empires games, 1 and 2 and online, and they're just incredible. So I love being able to explore and seeing what's around every corner, and finding a stash of gold or stone on the ground is like So I wanted to add that into my game.
It's really cool because you're referencing all these games that are completely different on their own, but having played Mr. Donovan, and people have seen some footage during this interview, you can see all the different inferences coming together, and it's really cool.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I think a lot of indie games, and mine especially, are just a sort of a homage to other games. All the games that we loved, all the games that inspire us and motivated us to enter the industry, because we thought, wow, if this game affected us so positively, then I would love to do that for somebody else to show that it's possible. Yeah. And then there were a few other things. There was one other game that I just couldn't get enough of for a while, which is Lovers in a Dangerous Space-Time.
Oh, yeah.
Love that game, and I loved the way they talk about love. I was really inspired by how much the whole game was just about love, and I was like, I need to add that into my game. Not enough games deal with love, It may not be the most in my game. It may not be dealt with in the most deep way, but I think the fact that it's in there just makes me happy. So right. You earn the love of pets and other animals in the environment, and they'll benefit you in who knows what way.
Cool.
So whatever ways they can. Yeah.
Awesome. To bring this to a close, we always like to ask developers what other indie games out there are really kind of capturing their attention. So are there any other dev teams or projects that are ongoing or coming out soon that you have really had your imagination caught by?
It's funny, I have a friend, my friend Alex is a fantastic game developer. He was actually mentioned in the Double Fine documentary on Broken Age. But he built a game. It's not new. It's been out, for a little while, but it's called Laser Lasso Ball, which I thought was really interesting. Yeah, he has a company called Ragtag Radical. You should look it up. But everything Alex does is extremely out of the box. Like, it's very, he has some interesting idiosyncrasies when it comes to his games that I really admire. Everything he does is really inspirational for me. So yeah, I would definitely keep up with him.
Cool.
If I were other people. And there's so many projects floating around the internet.
It's definitely true that there's a flood of projects out there, so it's hard to narrow it down.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Elliott, thank you for sharing a little bit about the background of Mr. Donovan and its production and your story as an indie developer. There'll be a link in the description below if you want to find Mr. Donovan on Steam.
Fantastic. Thank you.